votes, turn them into the Secretary of State, and then they go home. So that precinct is closed. They've got to get people, if they've gone home, back out of bed or wherever they've gone, back there to go through the process of recounting those votes in all of those precincts around Florida all over again. And as I said, it took them 9 hours to get to this point. They're going to have to do it all over again.
Now, the electoral vote, right you are, Ed Bradley, the electoral vote is breathtakingly close. Having pulled Florida back for the second time tonight, once having in the Gore column pull it back, now once having the Bush column pull it back, the electoral vote count stands 249 for Gore, 246 for Bush. Florida's the whole game, 25 electoral votes there. However it goes, that's the way it gets decided. Take a look at the overall national popular vote. Close, close, close. 48% to 48%. 46,731,058 votes for Bush.
About 18,000 votes difference.
46,713,047 votes for Gore. What about 18,000 vote difference?
It's about 18,000 votes out of 100 million votes.
This is the national tabulated vote, with a lot of California votes yet to be counted. Folks, I think we can say with some definition now that you aren't going to know who the next president of the United States is until fairly deep into this morning, say 8, 9, or 10 o'clock Eastern time. That would be the very earliest. And no one should be surprised if when we come on the CBS Evening News tomorrow night, there still is not a final decision in this situation. Not predicting it will take that long, but under the circumstances, and at last look, 1/30th of 1% was Bush's margin in Florida, and Florida's the whole game. Bob Schieffer?
Dan, I don't think we're going to know by tomorrow morning, because remember, in Florida, before they start the recount, they've got to finish the count. And that would include counting the absentee ballots that are there. This may take days to get this done. It may take days.
Well, on that very point, Byron Pitts, who's been wearing out shoe leather and working the phones for us down in Florida, is on the phone now from Florida with some information about how this recount deal will work. Byron?
Well, Dan, I just got off the phone with Christy Bronson. She's a lawyer with the Florida Division of Elections. She says, according to everyone in the office she's spoken to up in Tallahassee, no one can recall this ever happening in the state of Florida. What happens now, and basically they're going on the fly now, and sort of inventing things as they go. What will happen now, a group called the Elections Canvassing Commission will meet at some point in the next 24 hours, and they'll decide when and how this recount will occur. That commission is made up of the Secretary of State, who's a Democrat, the Director of the Division of Elections, no one's sure of his party affiliation, and the governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, Governor George Bush's brother. They will decide when and how this recount will occur. According to Ms. Bronson, the lawyer for the Division of Elections, she says that basically what will happen is, in theory, they could decide tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock or this morning at 9 o'clock that we'll have a recount. She thinks it would take at least 12 hours to recount the votes. Therefore, it looks like we may not know until as late as 9 o'clock Wednesday night who won this thing.
Byron Pitts in Florida. Byron, stay on the phone there. Questions abound in this whole thing. But to put everybody in, give some perspective, 270 electoral votes needed to win. At this juncture, we think Al Gore is assured of having 249 and that George Bush is assured of having 246. Everything gets down to Florida. Everybody thought Florida finally was going to go to Bush, but as the vote narrowed down, Bush still has a lead. At last report, it was about 1,200, which is 1/30th of 1% in a state where 6 million votes were counted. And so a recount is being contemplated. Now, the national vote, the national overall popular vote, this is the Florida vote, but the national overall popular vote is only about an 18,000 vote difference overall nationally, and a lot of votes still to be counted in California. This is the way it looks nationally. Now, Byron Pitts, on the phone, having talked to some responsible officials in Florida, says this is the deal. 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow morning, they're going to decide whether there is to be a recount. If things don't change dramatically, one understanding is that there is an automatic recount of any margin 1/2 of 1% or below, and we're talking about 1/30th of 1% for Bush at this point. So if they decide at 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow morning, that would be approximately 5 hours from now, to have a recount, Byron says the recount could take up to 12 hours, and under that, we wouldn't know until about 9 o'clock tomorrow night who's going to be the President of the United States. Byron, do you have anything else that sheds any light on this whatsoever?
Well, Dan, about that whole issue about the military votes overseas, the last time this came up in 1996, they say about 2,000 votes came in from overseas, that's residents as well as military overseas, came in about 10 days after the election. So that complicates the situation even more.
Indeed it does, but that was in 1998 where they had a close Senate vote. You say about 2,000 votes came in from overseas, and it might be days, and that does complicate the situation further. Well, Byron, get off the hook, get back to work, good job, and ring us when you have news. In fact, the way things are going, even ring us back if you don't have news, just to tell us you don't have any.
All right.
48% to 48%. 18,000 votes approximately. Check me at my arithmetic here, Bob. Having gone to TCU, we count on you for arithmetic. About 18,000 vote difference nationally in the popular vote. And a lot of votes have yet to be counted in California. California's 54 electoral votes, we believe, are solidly in the Gore category, but a lot of votes in California have not been counted. This raises the possibility that Gore could win the national popular vote, get more actual votes than Bush, and still lose the electoral vote if Bush clings in Florida, slim as it is at the moment, and carries Florida. Exclamation point. The possibilities abound as regards you, but it does now look for all the world like there's going to be a recount in Florida, at least in some precincts. It might take all day and into the night tomorrow night to finish that recount. The following things have happened in fairly quick order here. We've had sort of a waterfall, a cascade of events and announcements. Bill Daley, running the Gore campaign, comes out and announces to the crowd, in effect, yes, we called Governor Bush and we congratulated him, but then things began narrowing down in Florida. Some discrepancies, quote unquote, were reported. A lot of votes are still out. So we called Governor Bush back, Vice President Gore did, and said, I'm withdrawing my congratulations. In effect, I hope you'll understand, because this thing has gotten real close. Bill Whitaker reports that the Bush campaign, already in the process of celebrating, was stunned by that, and Whitaker reported that the campaign, and this is completely understandable, went into a period of confusion. Now, a steady and old political hand like Karl Rove isn't going to be confused for long. Among other things, he will probably get Governor Bush's younger brother, Jeb, the governor of Florida, back on an airplane, speeding back to Florida to kind of take charge, if he can, of this recount situation. And then we had Daley walk out and say, and announce to the crowd, look, under the circumstances, we feel we have to ask for a recount in Florida, and besides, Daley suggested that Florida law may demand a recount, so that's where we are at the moment. Bob?
Dan, just to add to the ironies of this evening, it was 40 years ago, in one of the closest elections ever, that Bill Daley's father, the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Daley, played a crucial role in how Illinois went. Remember, that was an election that was decided by several thousand votes.
Well, and Richard Nixon, who was the vice president trying to move to the presidency, had a lot of people recommending to him ask for a recount. After taking a look at the figures, it wasn't nearly as close as this was in the key state, if you will, in the decisive state. That's my recollection. But Richard Nixon said, no, I'm not going to ask for a recount. And he tentatively gave a concession speech at about 3 a.m. in the morning, was my recollection. And then in the morning at about 9 a.m. Eastern time, he gave his official congratulatory telephone call to John F. Kennedy. That was 1968, and the way this night has gone. 1960. That was 1960, beg your pardon. Humphrey versus Nixon in 68, another close election, but not nearly as close as this one. But that was 1960, and the way this night has gone, it may as well be the Napoleonic campaigns or something that happened back in the Vikings' time. It seems so far away. This campaign and election has provided full employment for TV pundits, for what I'm not quite sure. Ed Bradley, deep into punditocracy. On this Florida situation, we've said about everything that can be said, except this. One wants to keep focus that George Bush still leads in Florida. No matter how thin the margin is, he still leads in Florida. And if at the end, recounts notwithstanding, he leads, he wins. On the other hand, if it goes the other way, and if it's true, as we believe, that perhaps as many as 55,000 votes remain uncounted in Florida, including absentee ballots, if it turns out it goes the other way for Gore and he wins Florida, then he will be the next president of the United States.
So having said all of that, it could go either way, is what you say.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
But if you have to be Bush, I guess you feel you're in a better position. I recall, and you're talking about the 1960 election, that Jack Kennedy went to bed not really knowing for certain that he had been elected president of the United States, and his daughter jumped on the bed in the morning and was told to call him Mr. President. And that's how he learned that that was the first person to call him Mr. President.
His daughter Caroline, who lives here in New York and is the only surviving member of the nuclear John F. Kennedy family. It's true that there's not much left to say, except that this is a stunning and historical situation we have here tonight. By any reasonable and objective analysis, we are not going to know before about 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time earliest, and maybe as late as 9 o'clock tomorrow night. That would be 9 o'clock on Wednesday night, New York time, before who the next president is going to be. But we've said things early in the evening and this morning that we believe to be true. So who is to say that this can't suddenly turn around and take some dramatic turn? But it's hard, Leslie Stahl, to figure out anything at the moment that would prevent a recount from happening.
Recount is absolutely assured, but you talk about ironies. The candidate, the Republican candidate's brother, is the governor of the state where this is happening. He will have a say. He's on this committee that's going to decide about the recount, which I think is inevitable anyway, but how ironic is that? I'm sitting here thinking of all the conspiracy theorists out there, the people who get on the internet. Can you just imagine what they're going to be saying first about the media, what they're going to be saying about the Bush brothers? This is really going to cause a lot of turmoil. And I think that the networks are going to be hit over the head tomorrow morning.
Well, and Kendra, we deserve it to no small degree.
I think you're right.
I'm always reminded of those West Texas saloons where they had a sign that says, "Please don't shoot the piano player. He's doing the best he can." And this has been pretty much the case here tonight with this election. We do the best we can on these calls, but we have to stand up and take responsibility and be accountable. Don Evans, Bush campaign chairman, addressing the crowd in Austin. Let's pick him up, hear what he has to say.
Governor Bush and Secretary Cheney asked me to thank you for all your terrific support and hard work. We hope and believe we have elected the next President of the United States. The latest vote count in the state of Florida shows Governor Bush winning that state by more than 1,200 votes. They're still counting, and I'm confident when it's all said and done, we will prevail. Thank you again for all your hard work and all of your efforts, and we look forward to a great celebration. God bless.
Hello, Bush's campaign manager says he thinks they may win Florida by 1,200 votes, and that would be in the order of 1/30th of 1% out of 6 million votes counted. Now, when the late Lyndon Johnson won his Senate seat in Texas by an impressively small margin, they called him Landslide Lyndon.
87.
He won by 87 votes in Texas, a Senate seat, and they called him Landslide Lyndon. I'm not suggesting that anybody's going to call him Blowout Bush if he winds up winning this election, but you know, you can only joke up to a certain point. It's the future of the country. It's the next 4 years, President of the United States and leader of the free world. It hangs in the balance. Couldn't be any closer. But now the important thing that's happened here in the last minute or so is that Bush's campaign managers come out, and you heard him say very calmly and directly, we believe that we've elected the next President of the United States. Then he went on to say that by their estimate, Bush leads by 1,200 votes in Florida. There's some doubt about how many votes remain to be counted in Florida. Bill Daley, The Gore campaign manager said he thought there were as many as 5,000 votes to be counted. About an hour ago, our CBS News information was there might be as many as 55,000 votes, including absentee votes in Florida, yet to be counted. On a lot of this, nobody knows.